Hello Whovians, subscribers, and random people just stumbling over this video. Series 9 is kicked off, and you know what that means. It's time for me to review the new episodes. Now for this season, I'm going to take a slightly different approach to my reviews, and hopefully will offer a more detailed analysis and point-by-point explanation of things I liked and didn't like. If you prefer my old format, please comment below. So here's my take on The Magician's Apprentice. From what I've seen, even the classic Who community seemed to be divided on this one, with some saying they loved it while others saying they hated it. However, the ones that seem to love it for nostalgic reasons. Davros, the classic style Daleks, and maybe a Skaro closer to what we remember during the original series. While I'll agree that it was great that the classic style Daleks actually had more of an active role this time around instead of just being background scenery, nostalgic reasons aren't really why I enjoyed this. Before I get into this review, I want to say that I actually enjoyed this episode, and I'll explain why before I get into the things that I didn't like. Well, of course there's things I didn't like. This ain't no Robert Holmes script. Things I liked. Number 1, the opening scene. Pretty much everyone on both sides of the fandom agree that this opening scene was great. The production crew are actually willing to go the extra mile to make Skaro look the way we remember it in the original series. Even the uniforms worn by the soldiers instantly reminded me of Genesis of the Daleks. Overall, it was just a well-shot and well-produced sequence that's arguably the best 5 minutes of the entire episode. Even the incidental music was done correctly. It wasn't over the top. Number 2, Colony Sarf. For some reason, I just instantly loved this character as a villain. It's probably one of Moffat's best ideas since The Weeping Angels. I loved everything about this guy. The way he glided along the floor, the way he talked, and the disassembly sequence was probably the coolest thing I've seen since the Tesselecta changing its appearance in Let's Kill Hitler. It's rare for writers to actually present a villain that is just so awesome that we can't help but like them. See, I don't think Moffat really meant this character to be a really memorable villain. I think he intended Sarf to be like, that guy from the one with the dinosaurs on the spaceship. But he inadvertently created a likable villain because he isn't doing with Sarf what he does with Missy, forcing us to like the character. Apparently, a lot of fans liked Sarf, so I only hope this acceptance doesn't go to Moffat's head and he starts shoving the character in anywhere he can, because it just ruins the whole thing for us. Number 3, the Maldivarium sequence. Although this sequence was extremely short, I feel like it's worth mentioning because it's easy to see how this setting is reminiscent of the famous Cantina sequence from Star Wars. So I applaud the production crew for resisting the temptation to draw any parallels to that film here. They just focused on doing the business of the script and didn't waste time on painful cliches or nods to some other work of fiction. This is usually what makes Doctor Who great, when it stops pretending to be something else and just goes about doing its own thing, without standing on the shoulders of every other major science fiction film in history. Number 4, the Karn sequence. I also enjoyed the Karn sequence. Not only did the setting feel like what I've come to expect since its first appearance in the brain of Morbius, I also liked how Sister Ohila responds to Sarf's mention of Davros. It's great when we hear other characters in the Doctor Who universe acknowledge the disappearance of the Daleks, because it actually lends a little credit to those stories when you tell us they're gone forever. Number 5, Clara gets put in her place. It's no secret the companion being at the forefront of the series has been the bane of pretty much all of the classic Who community, and even some of the new Who community. What I'm about to say here is in no way meant to be interpreted as sexist. I mean this regardless of what the companion looks like or who they are. The companion, particularly present-day Earth school teachers, are infinitely inferior to the Doctor in every respect. He has more lives, more knowledge, more foresight, more intelligence. I mean, come on. He's an alien from a race of beings who are so far ahead of us technologically They reduced time travel to being a convenient way of getting some fresh hot coffee. I particularly love the dialogue scene between Missy and Clara because for once, Moffat actually puts things in their proper perspective for the audience. And for the character of Clara. She's struck with the realization that she's so far beneath the Doctor in terms of equality that he'd sooner send his final confession to his sworn enemy. Clara is shown to be exactly what the classic Who fans have always seen her as. Just the latest companion in a long line of past companions who have come and gone. This is perhaps more enjoyable for me than when Rose was hit with the realization that the Doctor had previously had children.
I was a dad once.
What did she say?
Oh, snap! Number 6. Classic Daleks are more than background scenery. One of the biggest disappointments in Doctor Who history was when Moffat announced he was kicking off Series 7 with a Dalek story titled Asylum of the Daleks, and made this big deal about how all the classic-style Daleks would be returning. Even people like me, who are so skeptic of anything Moffat says, were suckered into thinking he'd actually do this. Then we saw the episode, and they were just cardboard cutouts in the background in 1 or 2 shots. I guess Moffat learned his lesson from the backlash, because this time he actually has them move around in a few shots. Number 7. Davros is taken seriously. Apart from the Yeti, Davros is perhaps the only major classic villain Moffat has yet to ruin with a total reimagining of the character. Moffat is notorious for taking major villains from the original series and turning them into comedic shadows of their predecessors. The Sontarans were literally reduced to a source of comic relief. So I like how even when the Doctor faces off against Davros, the tone is serious and Davros is meant to be treated as a legitimate threat and not just another rubber monster carried over from the smaller budget days. Number 8. Minimum shaky cam and color filtering. Yes, I'm mentioning this. Anytime they can refrain from using this idiotic, headache-inducing trend is a plus. Number 9. The Dalek set design. The Dalek set design also harkens back to the original series by having the dull gray walls and minimalistic design. Now some of you might say that I'm liking this out of nostalgia, but anytime New Who does this, it's not so much that I like it because of nostalgia, but rather because it makes it consistent with the original series. It's one of those rare occasions where New Who actually makes an effort to maintain a little thing we like to call continuity. It's one of the reasons I like the Dalek set design in Victory of the Daleks versus what we saw in the Davies era. Number 10. Gravity. I think after seeing the negative response by fans to the Master being changed into Missy, Moffat felt he needed to reassure us older fans that while the character's outward appearance had changed, the mentality is the same. I can't help but be reminded of some of the Third Doctor stories where the Doctor was forced to team up with the Master to thwart a villain, simply because out of everyone else in the story, the Master was the only one who matched the Doctor in terms of intelligence and technical expertise. There's a great scene in this episode where the Doctor, Clara, and Missy are being held prisoner in a cell. As the Doctor is taken away, he utters a word to Missy, not Clara. This one line of dialogue is when the Doctor we all remember from the original series really shows. In just one word, we as the audience are told that while things look pretty grim, the Doctor hasn't just been sitting quietly waiting to be taken away. He's been making observations, taking mental notes, assessing his situation, and working on a way out. What I enjoy the most about this scene, though, is Missy's response. Once again, the companion is finally put in the place the role was meant to serve, a mouthpiece for the audience. We, as the audience, know the Doctor has far superior deductive reasoning skills than we do, and he can usually see things that we can't. We also know that the Master, being the Doctor's equal, can also see things we usually can't. So just like as if you or I were trapped in that cell with Missy, Clara never once bothers to take note of something so seemingly insignificant as the level of gravity in the room. Because we're humans and we don't think about that kind of stuff. We don't have the heightened senses that Time Lords do, and since we're only humans tagging along for this ride down the rabbit hole, we have to rely on their superior intelligence to keep us safe. Oh wait, they died. Things I didn't like. Number 1, the opening scene. Now I know I already said I liked this opening scene, and I really did, but what I didn't like about it was the fact that right off the bat, we've already got a kid in this season. What makes it worse is that we can now add Davros to the list of characters we've been forced to see as a kid. And once again, this kid looks to be roughly the same age as every other kid that's appeared in the new series. Seriously, am I the only one here that is seeing a pattern with kids in the Moffat era? Number 2, someone is missing. Again. This is getting so boring. We've already seen this before. And more than once, Panchi. In Series 6, Amy Pond goes missing and the second half opens with the Doctor and Rory searching for Amy. In Series 7, the Doctor meets a mysterious girl 3 different times and is off to search for the missing impossible girl. In this episode, the Doctor has gone missing and no one in the universe can find him. Not even this guy. Oh, for fuck's sake already. Tell us a story we haven't heard. Number 3. Wasted potential. Planes. I went into this episode with an open mind and was willing to give Moffat a chance, even though he ran out of chances like 2 seasons ago. When I first saw the plane frozen in the sky, I thought, that's interesting. It's actually a pretty neat plot idea. It's got suspense, it's got mystery. Gee, I wonder how this will all tie in with that opening scene. And what happens next can only be described as one of the biggest wastes of a great plot idea since the Tesselecta. You're telling me that this entire intriguing part of the story was written for the sole purpose of introducing Missy into the story and setting up a meeting between her and Clara? What the fuck? Why did any of this need to happen? Clara was obviously interested in what Missy had to say, especially when she dropped that whole confession dial bomb. So couldn't Missy have just met Clara after school one afternoon? Or at her apartment? Wouldn't that have been more advantageous for Missy? Then she wouldn't have had to do that whole frozen plane trick to keep a group of trained snipers from killing her. After she tells them how to do it. Seriously? Did the Master's new regeneration affect his gender and his brain? And why is this gigantic spectacle needed to get Clara's attention? Is Clara so ignorant that she wouldn't listen to what Missy has to say about the Doctor unless she puts on this huge show first? Not to put too fine of a point on this, but what would have been the difference, other than Unit would play no role in the story, if Missy had just been sitting in a cafe somewhere and Clara just happened to walk past, sees her, and sits down to chat about how she managed to avoid death last season? Wouldn't the story still work? Well shit, doesn't that mean that the entire plane frozen in the sky thing was just so we could have a short sequence involving Kate Stewart and Unit? Why? Number 4. Unit. Useless Nations Intelligence Task Force. Why was Unit in this story? Not only can they not work out that aliens probably had something to do with this, without the help of a high school teacher in her 20s, they don't even respond when Missy starts picking them off one by one like flower petals. I realize Unit isn't the main protagonist in this story, but shit, at least in the original series, they didn't fuck around when some of their guys were getting shot at. Number 5. Cartoons! I can find no reason for this occurrence in this story whatsoever other than to make the character of Missy more embarrassing than she already is. The boing sound effect here makes me think the intro to this show should look more like this. Number 6. Doctor Who. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. This entire sequence was just cringeworthy. And for me, it was the first sign that this episode was beginning to falter. Let's break down just how little makes sense about this scene. The Doctor enters the arena riding on a tank with no driver he brought to 1123 AD in his TARDIS that has an entrance exit too small for the tank to fit through. He's also playing a mean electric guitar on a set of large speakers in a period where no source of electricity exists. I realized the point of this scene was to convey that the Doctor felt his final hour had come and he just didn't give a rat's ass about maintaining timelines anymore. But did we really need this to convey that message? Number 7. Sarf's character is rendered pointless. Now this next part is what really pissed me off about this one because I like Sarf's character so much. Okay, so Davros remembers the Doctor from when he was a child on Skaro and realizes that the guy who gave them this was this guy. The Doctor, realizing he'd just saved Davros as a child, runs away and hides. Davros employs Sarf to find the Doctor because he and his Daleks have been unable to find him. So Davros suggests that Sarf seek out the Doctor's companions because they'll lead him to the Doctor. Okay, I don't want to sound nitpicky, but this suggestion lacks a lot of important information. Shouldn't Sarf be like, wait, what? Companions? The Doctor has companions? Who? Where? When? And even then, how would Sarf know that Clara is the companion to follow? What about Sarah Jane, Ian and Barbara, Jamie, or this guy? Isn't it a little convenient that Sarf just happened to pick this companion? Anyways, so somehow, by Missy using a vortex manipulator to transport herself and Clara instantly to 1123 AD from a cafe in present-day Earth, Sarf is able to follow them there and finally capture the Doctor for Davros. Great! Sarf had a purpose in this story, and he fulfilled it. After Sarf carts off his prisoners, the medieval fighter guy comes out of hiding, then starts rummaging through the Doctor's tent, because the Doctor now apparently lives outside the TARDIS. Anywho, Bors, the medieval fighter guy, discovers the TARDIS and is revealed to in fact be a Dalek agent. Wait, what? What did he say earlier?
I've been here for 3 weeks.
So Bors is a Dalek agent and has known all along where the Doctor was? Then why the fuck didn't Davros know this? Sarf didn't even need to show up. Number 8. Everyone and everything dies. Why does Moffat feel like the only way he can generate suspense with his audience is allegedly killing off all the major characters in his story? Come on, who actually thought Missy was dead? Everyone knows you can't just kill off a major iconic villain so nonchalantly. She already got shot last season and survived. And what about Clara? Holy shit, this girl's already died in Asylum of the Daleks to Snowman and has still managed to come through. Are we really saying that this is when Moffat is actually going to permanently kill off a major companion? And why did the TARDIS need to be destroyed? Couldn't they have just left it back on Earth in medieval England? Wouldn't that have cut it off from the Doctor as equally as hauling it all the way to Skaro, where the Doctor is being held, just to destroy it? Then why didn't they just destroy it on Earth? And we all know the Doctor isn't going to kill Davros as a kid because A, kids watch the show and Moffat knows he can't have a child die at the hands of the lead protagonist. B, killing Davros would mean the creator of the Daleks will never grow up to create them, thereby rewriting 50 years of continuity. C, the Doctor is using a Dalek gun to kill the person destined to create the Dalek gun he's using. Number 9, another paradox. Oh my gosh, can this guy ever write anything else? Why are Moffat's stories always following the same tired pattern? You know, where something in the Doctor's past comes back to haunt him because it turns out something he does in his future is why that thing in his past happened in the first place? Isn't this exactly what the whole premise behind Riversong was? Isn't this exactly what the whole premise behind last season's Listen was? I realize it's a show that deals with time travel and the opportunities to work with paradoxes is easy pickings, but hey, you know, the TARDIS can go other places too, like other planets, other universes. It can travel in space too. And not every story dealing with time travel has to be some sort of complicated paradox. What about the Mask of Mandragora or the Aztecs? Those were time travel stories, but without paradoxes. What about Genesis of the Daleks, which was set before any of the previous encounters with the Daleks? No paradoxes here. Nope. Number 10, writing entirely on nostalgia. My biggest complaint with this episode is the fact that once again, Moffat is drawing heavily on Doctor Who's established history for source material. I guess Moffat feels that us old fans of the series are too stupid to accept any new material, and that when we say we wish it was more like Classic Who, we mean we want everything from Classic Who. No, you fucking nitwit. You don't have to bombard us with all these references and plots revolving around established Doctor Who canon. That's not what we mean. When we say we want it more like Classic Who, we're talking about its tone and its presentation. We want new ideas presented to us the same way they were back in the 70s. You don't have to make it 4:3 aspect ratio, and you don't have to revert back to a 25-minute serial format. But you should A. Stop writing stories that delve so deep into established canon that you're forced to completely rewrite 50 years of history in order to make your story work. B. Focus on establishing new canon for the series instead of continuously falling back on the old. C. Write plots that revolve around a problem for the protagonist to overcome, not the protagonist himself. D. Focus less on character development plots and more on intellectual, suspenseful mysteries and horror. Well, that's about it. That's my take on the opening episode of Series 9. It's definitely not the worst I've seen of New Doctor Who, but it ain't the best either. My biggest concern now is that because Moffat was able to deliver a somewhat decent story in the first half, does this mean that, like last season's finale, the second half will be a totally incoherent mess that doesn't address the plot he spent so much time establishing in this episode? Roll on to the next review. If you like this review, be sure to like this review. Share it on social media like Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit.